I've seen people do too much. Like, it's just like there's so much going on. I mean, sometimes that might be the thing they're going for. But like, how do you talk to people about, or work on and with restraint, when you're creating something and recognizing maybe this is too much, maybe it's a little step too far. And how do you keep it, more inside of what's going to be impactful?
Yeah, so I think I will always remind myself with like whatever I'm creating, is it the right element with the right graphics for the right platform to deliver the right visual message, right? So like I always have this like foundation of elements in my design system. So I would actually have like this font style, this color palette, this HTML hierarchy in my design toolbox, in my design system. So I would just keep it consistent every time I use them to deliver my graphics, my visual message.
Welcome, everybody, back to the Full Battery Media Podcast. I have an awesome guest with me today. Would you like to tell people who you are and a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, thanks for having me here. I'm Emily Lam. I'm a graphic designer, creative thinker, and a curious visual storyteller. I have 20 years of experience in creating branding system, print, web UI UX, social media graphics, infographics, etc. So, as a designer who has been exposed to international upbringing, I find it fascinating to explore the intersection between different cultures, like Asian, Hispanic, African, European, East meeting the West. So I've often bring this juxtaposition into my creations, which reflect in the art and design I create during my leisure time. I always want to bring my design to engage our audiences to think from a global citizen perspective and on top of the American perspective. So I always think out of the box, experiment, and create something new. And also, I'm a working mom with a 5-year-old, and I wish there were 48 hours a day.
Right. Right. I totally understand that. Well, I wanted to ask you a question. How did you get started in this career? How did you start down this path?
Yeah, so I love drawing since I was a child. I think I started drawing from when I was like 5 or 6 years old. I started drawing on my school notebook, like just scribbling. And then I started
Nice.
drawing this comic series when I was like 9 or 10 years old. And then at like grade 6 or 7, I started having this comic series with 76 pages of comic with composed with
Mm.
my friend. So it's kind of like the journey of creating this like creative process and developing into my design industry, like the design career.
That's awesome. Did you feel like this is something that you always wanted to do? Like it was just something that you knew from a young age?
Yes, I just love design. I love drawing. I love everything art. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. Well, I wanted to ask you, like, when someone sees your work, what do you think that they're seeing? What principle is the big thing that you think is the core part of your artwork?
My core part of the artwork is always I always think outside of the box. So it has a very deep concept inside my artwork. So I always create a layer of depth of the meaning using a lot of symbols and metaphors that associate with personal experience or cultural context. Like I often bring a lot of references from the art history to support
Hmm.
my design rationale. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, you in our message, I put together a bunch of questions, but then you also wanted to talk about some different some different pieces of art. Can you tell me what some of those pieces of art were? What was the first one that you messaged me about?
Yes, I want to talk about like Michelangelo's creation of Adam. It is
Yeah.
because like I think when you were asking me about like how to develop taste, right?
Yeah.
I think to develop taste is be curious about your surroundings, be observation, like good observation about your everyday life, but also
Hmm.
studying art history gives you a
Right.
foundation, gives you a very good background of how to support your design rationale for your artwork. So I was talking about Michelangelo's creation of Adam because it has been used in many ways, even currently in the tech industry. I just saw one um, in one of the highways billboards that I passed by the other day, and it was using creation of Adam is having God's like fingers touching Adam's finger, right? So this advertisement is talking about like Adam's finger touching a lot of white mouse like finger mouse cursor together. So it is the way that we see this piece in a representation of connectivity, but it is repeatedly being used in many industries to represent connection and communication.
I love that. And this is so true is like the image of the tooth, God reaching out and the finger, reaching is so iconic. I mean, it's the definition of iconic. It's an image that you show that to anyone and they will probably know that image because it
Mm.
is something that is universally known across so many cultures because it's just such a powerful piece. But this is something that um it makes me wonder like about visual rules, like if you're doing something on, because I meet people that are doing thumbnails, but I meet people that are doing music video design, people that are doing posters. Are there rules that apply no matter what the platform, brand, or medium, and that you think that things that people need to focus on all the time?
I think, in my opinion, I think
Yeah,
there are no definite rules.
I
The
love that.
only rule is whether your target audience is getting your visual message or not. Like,
Oh,
as a designer, our goal is to train our eyes for balance, for visual direction, and for a consistent look, right? So
yeah.
when you talk about contrast, like color theory, negative, positive space, margins, minimum size of logos, those are guidelines for readability, but not rules. So getting
Hmm.
consistent with your visuals is the key. Apply to your design system because rules cannot teach you taste. So you throw away all the rules, right? Don't let them ruin or restrain your creativity. Think out of the box. Find new ways to your design and let your creativity go wild.
Mm, I love that. I love that because it's like, why do we need to be sitting inside a box? And I I was sitting there thinking about that recently when someone was talking about designing a thumbnail. And I said, and they're like, how should it look? And I was like, I don't know. I mean, there are ways that people are doing it, but be original, do you, and find something that is because I think right now I see so many people, especially in this age in social media and content creation, everyone's copying everyone. And everyone's trying to look just like everyone else, like so a guy gets a million views on a video, people will go and try to reproduce the exact same video in their own way or style. And I mean, certainly great artists throughout history have kind of seen examples and copied it, but it's like I still feel like there's so much room for originality, you know?
Yes, exactly. Like you have to jump out of the box to see what you are creating, right? If you are like
Yeah.
diving into the same design every day, you just feel like your brain is like really in a brain fog that you can't really know what kind of visual message you're going to deliver to your audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also
100%.
I think authenticity is the key. Like
Yeah.
nowadays, with a lot of overwhelming generative AI image, right? People are actually seeking for authenticity
Mhm.
matter the tone of voice or original graphics or real photos, right? Because those will engage our audience and gain their trust.
Yeah. One of the things in this podcast Um, you told me beforehand, and you're doing great. So you told me that you were nervous before getting on here, and I get it. Like, getting on a new platform is always so stressful. It is stressful. Like, there's no getting around that, and putting yourself out there. But you're doing awesome. But one of the things that I've found with my podcast, people are like, oh, you can edit out all the mistakes. I'm like, I love the mistakes. I love it when someone's cat jumps up in the middle of the episode, or their kid runs in, or the dog starts barking, because that's the reality of life. It's like those little things that make it like not clean is what I think is the best thing that we can have going into our creations. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be absolutely 100% polished. It just has to be able to connect to people.
Yes, especially when I'm working on graphics, right? And many times I have this perfectionist head inside me and saying like, hey, you got to do a good job. You got to move like one more pixel over, right? But
Mhm.
it's come down to the theory of done is better than perfect. There is no
Yes.
100% perfect, right? So it's better
Yes.
to just do it and feel good about it and launch it.
I love that. I love that because it's especially like I work with people on creating content, and sometimes they're like, "Can I change this one thing?" I'm like, "No one besides you is going to notice that." Like, the best thing that you can do is to finish that up, like, and then get out there and do it again, do it again, do it again. And this is something too because people have such short attention spans. Um, how do you think people, especially creators, think about like hierarchy and the importance of different things when attention spans are so short and everything feels important?
Yes, I think have like effective visuals tailored to your target audience is very important. So
Yeah.
with such a short attention span, like especially on social media graphics, right? Like creating something beautiful or a bold title is not enough. We got to have like strategic thinking to focus on
Yeah.
one main subject or story you want to talk about. Like
Hmm.
also think about which platform is the right platform to support your visual storytelling. Sometimes people do videos, sometimes people just
Yeah.
choose to have a static graphic, right? Whichever is more effective to communicate to your audience, right? So some strategic thinking I always use is the 4 W's and H. Of course, you know what that is, but I'm just going to say why you're doing it, right? What is the subject? Who you are doing it for? When will it be launched? How you're going to execute so you get the right visual message to your audience, right? And also, I also consider this diversity constraints, like because of different values and perspectives, right? Like different social practice, personal experience, and like probably symbolism behind it, right? I want to take an example that I have done before. I
I'd
use
love to
this like
hear.
okay, like
Mm.
hand gesture for
Yeah.
one demographic campaign, but later on, I was told to take it down because that OK gesture is actually represent like something related to white supremacy.
Oh,
This could
wow.
be very dangerous. Yeah. So
Mm.
it is a new like this is a new trend, but we
Yeah.
would never thought of that way, right? So
Right.
always like research on the symbols and representation that you would apply to your design before you actually do the work.
I love that because you might not know everything, but if you do the research, you'll be able to look at it and go, um, "Wow, okay, I didn't know that, but now that I do, let's change that. Let's adapt and put something else into place." But it's interesting too because what can be the most impactful thing? One thing that I know everyone talks about grabbing attention, but are you grabbing attention in the right way and grabbing the right people's attention? And so I know everyone just wants attention, but if you're grabbing the wrong attention, you're not going to be getting the right people?
Yeah, delivering the wrong message to the wrong people and not having an effective campaign, right?
Mm-hmm. 100%. Like, when people are creating like how I've seen people do too much. Like it's just like there's so much going on. I mean, sometimes that might be the thing they're going for. But like how do you talk to people about, or work on and with restraint, when you're creating something and not and recognizing maybe this is too much, maybe it's a little step too far. And how do you keep it, more inside of what's going to be impactful?
Yeah, so I think I will always remind myself with like whatever I'm creating, is it the right element with the right graphics for the right platform to deliver the right visual message, right? So like I always have this like foundation of elements in my design system. So I would actually have like this font style, this color palette, this HTML hierarchy in my design toolbars, in my design system. So I would just keep it consistent every time I use them to deliver my graphics, my visual message.
I love that because if you have the stuff that you know works and you can go to that, you can pull that out and say, all right, where are we at? Oh, this is where we're at. This is what we're doing. And it works. Like one of the things I think about is like these are really, really good restaurants. I have here in Asia, in Vietnam, we have some restaurants that are just absolute holes in the walls. There's one alley right over here, like my house is here, right over there. I'm pointing exactly where the restaurant's at, but it's not a restaurant. It's like a street food stall. And it's this old lady, and she makes bunvet. Now, what is bunvet? Bunvet is like duck vermicelli soup, and it is so ridiculously good. And it is just beyond good. And you know what? She's got her recipe down. She doesn't change up the recipe. She knows what works, and she goes to it again and again and again. Every day she pulls that soup out, and people will always line up for it because it's the style. And then you can have variations of that, but you have that thing that pulls you. One of the people that I'm so reminded of is like Hans Zimmer. Like we all know what Hans Zimmer sounds like. There's that certain vibe that he has, but we still all are excited about what he brings to each movie. You hear, oh, Hans Zimmer's doing the music. I remember I got to work on a movie once that Hans Zimmer was doing the music for. And all these celebrities were on set, but like for me, I was I was geeking out the moment Hans Zimmer walked on, and I was just like, oh my God, that's Hans Zimmer, because it's just, but yet he takes these sounds that are so iconically, uniquely his, and then he finds a way to make it amazing.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's their branding. That's their own personal branding, right? So because it is create this consistent tone of voice, image, right, that represents them, right? So it's like the promise of the brand, right? You keep the consistency of the style, the way to dress, or even when I talk to you about design, is like the color palette, the font style,
Passion.
because your audience will get a cohesive experience.
I love that. And I think that that cohesive experience is so powerful, but it also leads me to my next question. And, how do you decide what to remove when something feels like it's too much? How do you know what's, you want to focus on? I think, because for me, I always like with my team, they're always like, Mr. Sean, why are we adding more? And I'm like, I always want to put more. And then sometimes I realize it's not about putting more. And sometimes you have to take things away, to make it more clean, to make it more impactful. How do you know what to remove with a design?
Yeah, same to me. Like I often feel like, am I putting too much? Is it less? Is more? Like I would just
Uh,
like step away and come back and see if those elements are still delivering the right visual message, right? And then reset my mind and my eyes, right? Because when we are staring at the same graphic for hours, like we're going blind.
you can't see
And
it.
then we
You,
just take a
yeah.
step out because clear our mind. Basically, what your mind is thinking is the flow of creation that will apply to your design. So you have to declutter your mind in order to have a clear mindset of how to apply the design elements to your canvas.
I love that because if you can clearly figure out how to apply them, and sometimes, and one of the things that I think is important is to try to keep things clean. Like, and I'm not saying visibly clean, just clean with a focus on what are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to share? What story? Because it comes back to this. And I mean, and one of the things that I feel, and there are some people out there doing AI well, but I feel one of the challenges I feel with AI content so far is that people have forgotten the fact that the most powerful thing that connects us is story. And are you anchoring something in story? Because, people don't care about the perfect visuals. I mean, you go back, people used to tell stories with film cameras and with, and paintbrushes and such. It's powerful stories were told with the medium of like Michelangelo's, the Sistine Chapel, it was this super powerful story told with just a brush and a man laying on his back. But he designed this masterpiece that communicates across time. And it comes down to a great story.
Yeah, yeah, I totally see that. And nowadays, right, AI is being used over like everywhere. As a designer myself, I always also use AI in my
Yeah.
production. I have this love-hate relationship to AI though. I
Right.
love AI in a way that is speeding up my process, it's speeding up my design, overall the design look. But when I'm tailored to a certain concept, like I want that way, right? I think AI is just doing 50% of the work that I want to do. And I will have to go into the design and do the rest of the work by like touching up, by, doing photoshopping or something like that. I was actually have to spend another 50% to finish the final product. So the the hate part, I don't really want to say hate, but this not as nice part is AI always have this question of authenticity, integrity, right, of the AI generated images, right? Because AI is actually generating images from millions of references, and many of them are copyrighted from other designers. So it is kind of like, is it authentic? Like, is it original? Like, I have this case from a design community. So there was a client asking a designer to do like a logo. So the designer provided 6 options for that client. And the next day, the client came back saying like, oh, I have this AI generated logo. Can you actually trace it for me, please? Of course, the designer was really frustrated because he's asking about the authenticity, integrity, right? But I want to say is to all those clients is um, when you are asking a designer to do some kind of design work or logo, it is about the design process. Like we, the designer, bring you the professionalism to bring your vision of your brand coming to true. So if you're taking the fast track, there's like losing this value, right? You're building your brand, you're building your own visual brand. This is the most important thing in the design process.
I love that as well. My daughter studies piano. She loves painting. She loves art. All of the art around the room is my daughter's, and she has. This is her version of Edward Monk's The Kiss that she did. You got yours there in the background. This is hers that she did, and it was her. Is
Yeah,
Yeah, like
Klimt.
glimpse, yeah,
Yeah, I
and you've got
remember.
one in
Yeah,
the
Klimt.
like a similar like painting in the background, and
Yes, that's
I
my
love it.
painted. Yes, that's my
But the
painted.
crazy part is like you guys both were looking at this powerful, famous painting, and then you said, "How can I make that my own?" And my daughter's studying piano now, and she sits down and she's like, well, there's all these things, these apps that can make some music for you now. And I said, but you are developing your voice. You are getting in there and figuring things out. Like, I have this weird, wacky podcast that all of my podcasts, I go all over the place. Like, I talk about nonsense sometimes, and we'll do weird references. But at the end of the day, it's uniquely mine. And to like someone eventually, I know they're already doing it. They're already doing AI generated podcasts. But I mean, come on. Do you want to listen to two AI chatbots talk about random things for 2.5 hours? Dude, forgive me. No, never. I would never want to listen to that. I want to hear people and their lived experience telling me stories. I want to see people and their lived experience expressed through artwork. I want to hear a song of a person who has loved and lost, and then they put that into their music, that soul and that passion. And I mean, I'm not hating on AI workflows. If you want to use a tool to give you an idea about how that could be presented differently, then find your own way with that, and I think that that's the thing. We can learn to respect, and the beauty of a new technology, but also figure out how you can go about and make it your own. But I wanted to ask you another question, like, what changes about visual decision making when you're producing content consistently? What changes about visual decision making when you're producing content consistently instead of just sometimes? So, like, if you're doing something again and again and again for an art, like a project or a person that you're making something for, versus a one-off project, what's different in those two things?
I think when you are doing consistent thing, right? Basically, it's kind of like you have to build a design system around it. Like I usually would like prep myself with a design system and assets library ahead of time, like creating all the font library or color swatches library, and then apply to the design especially when it is under stress, because a lot of times graphic designers are the last gatekeeper to launch the product. And we would have to compete with time. And then I would just apply that to from my toolbox and to the design. And if there's like a one-off thing, I would just like explore different options, experiment with it. As I said, like I often get ideas from different art history references, or sometimes I would just jump on the bus to subway to gather ideas to see if there is something very inspirational. Then I would take a picture, take it down to my Pinterest or some other mood board and try to experiment and apply to that. Yeah.
I love that because it allows you to kind of, when a painter is going about to create a painting, the first thing they start with is finding your inspiration. But after that, you have to look at what paints you have. What are you going to be creating? And if you can look at what's in front of you. And I think that one of the things that I think is most important for people is to look at, again, the story you're trying to tell, and then what medium you have to tell it in. What tools do you have to tell it with? And I think once you do that, you sit there and go, because if you have to paint the same painting again and again and again every day, well, you're going to have to figure out how to do that in a way that allows you to stay creative. But what leads to my next question, like, for people that are scaling things, how do you build these visual systems that scale without killing your originality, without killing off that passion to create?
I would say every single brand have their unique visual identity. So I like to keep the core elements, as I said, in the branding system, branding library, so I can apply to it. Because, when the project evolves, I need to have some flexibility with the system. And especially when it comes to company strategy or values that has changed, then I will have to find new ways to scale it. Like, for example, for PowerPoint, there's like not enough graphics. You have to expand it into a new corporate like brand identity that I can scale it to compensate to the new identity, right? And with that expansion, it allows me to expand or take away something that is not updated not out of place to gain that cohesive branding experience.
I love that. And to me, it's interesting too, because when I go about trying to stay creative, I have to sit there and slow down. And I mean, I know I have to go fast because I have a lot of stuff to do, but I still have to slow down and I get back to my basics, and I sit there and go, what are the steps I need to go through? And like I operate off of checklists. I've got checklists everywhere because for me, I want to make sure that I'm not skipping steps, and I'm not skipping things that I know are going to bring a quality to a project or to my productions. Because when you rush, I think that and I know that sounds weird, like originality. I keep my originality by being structured, but that structure allows me to have the originality because I'm not forgetting the steps that I go through to make something fun and pop. So I don't know if that makes sense, but I had a teacher who was a super OCD art teacher. And he's like, start off by doing this. And he would go through this process and he was like truly OCD, like not just like kind of OCD, like really OCD. And he was like, everything was in its place. The paints were in their place. And then he would put things out the same way. And I said, why do you do it the same every time? And he's like, well, because I have to. That's the way my brain works. But then what he said is that the structure, he didn't have to think about that every day. He didn't have to sit there and think about how he was going to lay out, the artwork, where he was going to put his stuff that he was going to paint, how he was going to put it together. That was all instinct. And so what he was able to do was to save his energy for the creativity because he's like, I've got all of this stuff structured. I've got all of my steps done. And then when I show up, I just show up to create. And I love that because it was like, get rid of all of the stuff that you have to put the extra. I'm not saying everyone has to do this, but I am reminded of like Steve Jobs, who wore the same turtleneck every day because he wanted to be able to not have to put his decisions into that. And then he wanted to put his decisions into other creative ideas.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I'm the opposite. I always have like
Mm.
everything all over the place because I feel there's like a catalyst to something that whenever I grab something wrong in the wrong place, I was like, oh, this is the spark that I can create something
Yeah.
like this way, right? So I think everybody would treat their design inspirations in a different way. I like to keep things in a certain place, like for example, my pen, my
Mhm.
mouse, everywhere. But when it comes to like design, like elements or design, like references, I might just go wild with everything because I want to try everything. If that's working on that, that's the way to create new style in my sense, to create new
Yeah.
catalyst, new chemistry.
I love that. And it's like one of the things that I think is beautiful right there is that there's no right way. Like each person has to find their own way, and it's not like you want to do this and be successful, follow my way. Anytime I see one of those online courses where someone's like, this is the way to, and I was like, is it? Or is it one way? And I'm not hating on it. I'm sure that it is a great way, but this person's way might not work for this person, and I think that you have to find that vibe and that spark. Um, and the relationship between consistency and trust in your creative decisions. It's like you have to find that balance point for yourself. And what is that relationship for you between creating at a consistent level and then also finding that creative spark at the same time?
Yeah. So as I said, I always create this branding guidelines or branding system within toolbox within my toolbox. But when I need to create something that is not like it is new, totally new, then I have to just explore different ways of like designs, inspirations. As I said, I always go out and go to take a walk or go to a coffee shop or talk to people or take a bus ride to see what is interesting around you. Like it is accumulated through experience and through time and through that you develop that taste of how to build up this new ways of thinking Meanwhile, you have this consistency in your toolbox already, but you want to actually expand out there, explore new things because you are the designer. You need to create something new. You can't just always stuck in the box and like, oh, I have to do it this way. I have to do it that way. Like, as I said, like you really need to have a spark, a new spark in your mind to create something new.
And I love that coming back full circle to what we talked about in the beginning. That starts off by studying the masters, studying the greats. And I mean, if you're making YouTube videos, watch people that make great YouTube videos, but also watch great movies. Go back and watch, classic vintage films that can tell you a great story arc. Because at the end of the day, I was talking to a creator last night that was doing really cool stuff. And one of the things that he was saying was, we were talking about this, and I said, I wish that there were more YouTubers that recreated like classic ideas from movies. One of my favorite movies was this movie called The Great Escape, and it was these guys, these American soldiers that escaped from a German prison in World War II. And I was like, what if a YouTube producer, because like said, hey, can we build this so that we can see if regular average people could figure out how to tunnel out from a place and do this exact thing and get across all of this land to this other side of this field? I mean, that's interesting to me, but you have to go back and watch a classic story to figure out, can you tell that story in a new medium, in a new way?
Yeah, that's quite powerful.
Right? Study the masters.
Yeah, studying the masters is quite powerful because, as I said, like, for example, a lot of logos are actually created from like design rationales behind a lot of great masters, a lot of great, maybe using like religion, even religion, Greek mythology, right? For
Yeah.
example, Venus, right, is represent the god of love. And then when you see Venus on a Valentine's Day, you know what that means, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of that representation of how this symbol and representation associates with the culture context of your personal experience. That is powerful.
I love that. I love that a lot. And one of the things too is that I wanted to ask you this because um, as some people are starting to grow and they're looking at these classics, what's the fastest way for people to improve their visual taste, to learn what good is, And maybe I shouldn't say fastest because maybe we shouldn't be doing fast, but how can someone improve their visual taste and just make sure that they're making things that are better and landing better?
I totally say there's no fast track, there's no fast way. I accumulated my taste and experience through continuous observations and curiosity throughout my years. And I would accumulate those experience into my, I say, toolbox, which is my brain, and always draft it into my Pinterest or mood board or something. I actually spend like time in like browsing emails and like social media accounts that has like great graphic content, and then pin it and then drop it into my mood board, because one day when I search for a certain topic, I will find those useful, right? And so I also would tell those people, usually those are collaborators who don't have a visual background, just, keep observing your everyday environment. See if like there's anything interesting to you, like maybe your neighbor got a new dog with a new dog tag or something that will put you like, oh, that's a great new thing that I want to learn about. Like, just be curious, right? So I often tell people and educate people with this like design inspirations, like put into your toolbox.
I love the idea of a toolbox because we are building out the tools that we have to tell great stories. And, you don't realize what tools might come in handy. But if you are going out and learning and watching and seeing, you're going to get to a place where you have more tools to use. And I think that's the real powerful thing is what tools can you be adding to that toolkit? And step by step, slowly, day by day, you're building out your toolkit to look more beautiful and to give a better product to your clients, a better product to yourself. And I think that's beautiful. And again, there is no fast way. You know, and I think that and that's one of the challenges with integrating into AI right now is I think everyone wants fast. Everyone wants fast. That I think slow art has a place. I know that for my team, we used to take, 2 weeks to edit a long form video. Now everyone wants it in a day. They want it in, shorter times. People want visually appealing reels that can be edited in an hour. That's just not going to always be great content. And I think people need to learn that you don't need a video that you edited in an hour. You need a video that hits. You need something that really makes an impact. And stop trying to be quick. Instead, try to create something with impact. Don't just spam people. We have an epidemic of spammed content right now. And I think that's if I were to climb on my like tower to wave the flag of don't do this, I would tell people stop spamming people. Make better content and make content that you think actually people want to hear and listen and reference.
Yeah, completely. So authenticity, again, it will bring people to your content because we are just human. We want to, see real things. We want to associate with that through personal experience, through like us, like talking in the same direction, same language, same visual language, right? So it's important that what we create right now is original. Like I know there are a lot of AI generated content here, but what brings it to your design powerful is your originality of idea.
That's it. It's the originality of the idea, and you have to sit there and go outside the box. And I think that you can find an inspiration from stuff. But that's one of the things too is like I've noticed with AI content, I'm not hating on it, but it goes off the rails. Like here's people, I want to see a bear in the painting. Like the AI, I want to have like the bear starts dancing and doing some weird viral trend like TikTok dance, and I'm like, whoa, what's happening there? And it's like I think that you have to, again, people are going to get really tired of weird and really tired of like feelings that like it's doing too much. I think that getting back and again talking to people about storytelling, and that's what it's all about. Whether you are creating a simple visual image or you're doing something more, like writing a book or something like that. What is the story you're telling? And I wanted to ask you this, like, what habits are really important for you to create great content?
Mm, my habit is like just be consistent with my tone of voice and style. So having a unified message to your audience and also keeping all the internal and external materials for your brand, for your company consistent, like same color palette, font family, and graphic elements. Yeah, because this one is very important to bring your audience attention to your consistent storytelling.
I love that, and I think that's so important. And I wanted to know if a creator came to you and said, "Hey, I need one piece of advice to make sure that I'm doing things really well." What would you tell them to do?
Um, I will just tell him, probably just tell him, you know what? Understand your audience first, why you're doing it, right? And then explore ideas or ways like or inspirations of how to execute that design, how to put that artwork. And then, just keep experiment and try it. When it comes to a certain point that you have solid designs around you, you know which one will work by laying out right there. And then you will just, tell your client saying like, hey, I have this kind of design. What would resonate with you, your point of view? going to that direction. So you both, your client and you will have this consensus of getting the right message across.
I love that. And I think that one of the things too is that, find your angle. You also talked about Michelangelo's creation of Adam, but one of the other pieces that you wanted to talk about was MC Escher's Infinite Staircase, which
Yes,
is one of my favorite pieces. I love it. And one of the reasons I love it is because it's so different. And it's so like, and this is the thing I love is like, don't try to be like everyone else. MC Escher did not try to be like everyone else. MC Escher was like so different. It was this pure originality. Talk to me about why you love MC Escher so much.
I have been inspired by his work long time ago. I think this infinite staircase, they were talking about illusion, right? But I think there's more than that. I actually use it for one of my design campaigns here. It is about connecting ideas, intercessions, um, like a collaboration of ideas through this intercession staircase, reaching to new platforms, something like that. So I really like this connected ability of creating something new, especially in a community setting.
I like it as well because I think that, when people are trying to recreate someone else's video, you go to another person's brand and look at what they're doing and go, oh, I want to be like them. Okay. Like, but how can you be like you? What's your angle? What's you don't be the guy who is creating something just like someone else. Be the MC Escher of YouTube. Be the like, what does that look like? Well, I don't know. I think it looks like something that we haven't seen yet because it's something that people are still waiting for, and they might not know they're waiting for it, but when it comes, it hits. Like you see stuff like Squid Games. Squid Games, I remember reading about the director of Squid Games had pitched that, the right creator of that had pitched the concept way before, and people thought he was crazy. And then he held on to it and kept going. And then suddenly it came out at the right time and the right elements came into place. And suddenly it's like, wow, how was this not a hit all along? And yet there were people who didn't believe in that vision. There were people who heard what was being presented and said, this is a little bit weird. I don't think people are going to like this. But he was like, no, I'm pretty sure they will. And you have to stick to that choice. And I'm not saying, go down on the ship with it, but I am saying, we need more people who are willing to stick to those choices,
Yeah, because it's unique. It stands out as its own brand. You will remember it, right? As I said, there's another example I want to bring as Sonos speakers, one speaker. So it is like an advertisement in 2017 to 19. So what resonates with me is it is a very simple advertisement. So it has this Sono one speaker, and there's a mouth, big lips, opening mouth above the speaker. That's it for the advertisement. It is very bold, very clear. It is like a very pop culture icon. It just like very catchy. But I still remember it like today because it's just very straightforward, simple. It's talking about voice activation for Sonos speaker. So I think just something very unique and it will stand out for years, right?
I completely agree. It doesn't have to be fancy, but it has to be something that I remember when I was a kid, the RCA ad, I believe it was RCA, it was like a speaker ad, and it had this guy, it was a simple picture, and he was sitting in front of a speaker system and it was blasting the clothes behind him. And like, it was just like, it was like sitting inside of a wind tunnel. And that simple visual was enough to just sit there. You go, I knew that it meant that what was coming out of that speaker had this powerful impact on the person. And you didn't have to explain it, but you saw it. And that image still resonates, because it was so creative and such a bold choice. I want to ask one last question. If you could go back in time and give yourself some advice, what advice would you give yourself?
I would actually tell myself explore some other areas that is not graphic design or some adjacent design industry, like, for example, fashion, architecture, interior design, because I think um, their design execution is slightly different from graphic design, or like when you're telling about like UI design or UX design, that's different. But it will inspire you in a way that it will bring you new insights to how you create your design, to apply new techniques to your canvas. So also transforming philosophy into visual communication would be my another advice to my previous self, because I wish I could study a lot more philosophy and understand the concept behind it. And, you know, as I said, art history has a very strong support for design rationale. Same for philosophy, even religion can actually has a lot of metaphors, symbolism that can be applied to your design. And another thing is, I want to curious like a child, right? Have an open mind, even more open-minded than right now, and just trying to see why people are doing it this way. And I wish I could have that mentality when I was in my earlier years, right?
Hmm.
And one final thing I want to say is never lose your passion for design. Like in
Yeah.
my years of experience, I've seen many of like great designers. My friend, he pivoted to another finance industry because he's like burned out. He's enough with the design. But I just keep telling myself that I need to keep it up. I never lose my design passion, right? Because that's where I started my passion in the first place. When I was 6, I kept started drawing, and then I kept my comic books, and then it leads me to this this current moment today that I'm a designer. So I'm just like telling myself that work towards your passion is the most important thing.
Walk towards your passion. I think that's got to be the title of this video. Walk towards your passion is where it's at, you know. And one of the things too that I would love to say is like, and then to ask you, where can people find out more about your work and learn about you?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn. So my LinkedIn handle is Emily Lam SF. And I also have a website, pixelperm.com, Pixelperem. And I'm also on Instagram at pixelperm too. Yeah.